With 2,830 miles on the log, we arrived at the world's northernmost town, Hammerfest. We were now as far north as northern Siberia and Alaska, and as far east as Athens. At 70 degrees 39 minutes north, the town owes its existence to the warm waters of the Gulf Stream, which keep the harbour free of ice throughout the winter. Essentially a fishing port, Hammerfest is also much frequented by oil rig supply ships. The winter must be pretty grim for the 7,500 inhabitants, especially during the 2-month period of continuous darkness. We were now in Finnmark, a bleak region that includes part of Lapland. Most of Finnmark consists of treeless tundra speckled with the nodding heads of bog cotton, and studded with countless lakes. A fascinating environment with a rich wildlife. We felt we ought to visit the world's northernmost pine forest. This is at Stabbursdalen National Park. We were joined for this excursion by several members of Warbaby's Arctic crew, who had just flown in. Kevin Horsfield from Bermuda looked out over one of Stabbursdalen's many beautiful lakes.
Generally, trees cannot grow north of 70 degrees of latitude due to the severe climate and very short growing season. Only in the sheltered Stabo Valley are conditions mild enough for a small forest of pine and birch to survive. Growth is very slow. Some of the pines are at least 500 years old, but have still not reached the height of a 15-year-old tree growing in southern Norway. The pine forest is the home of the largest species of grouse, the capercaillie, as well as Siberian jays and the three-toed woodpeckers, enough to quicken the pulse of any birdwatcher. Elk, known as moose in North America, and reindeer are also found here. Apart from a pair of Siberian jays, which screeched at us from a tree, most of the other interesting inhabitants of the valley eluded us. However, we did find many of the commoner wildflowers, like this patch of dwarf cornel. Nearby, Nick Riley, another member of Warbaby's Arctic crew, found the cast antler of a reindeer. Laps still follow their herds through the valley, as they have done for centuries. Permafrost prevents water sinking more than a yard or so into the ground. Consequently, there are lakes everywhere, and the Stabo River always flows strongly. On the south side of the river we found a stand of birch and some very attractive wildflowers. The founder of the system of scientific classification of plants and animals still used today, Carl Linnaeus, made a lengthy journey through Lapland in 1732. Struggling through bogs and icy torrents and severely bothered by the ferocious mosquitoes, he wrote in his journal, "How I wish I had never undertaken my journey."
We had a bit of trouble with mosquitoes too. Fortunately, we'd brought special head nets with us. With her new crew of 11 on board, Warbaby set out for Spitsbergen. It was to be a remarkable trip. But those who had sailed along Norway's northern coast already had much to remember. During the summer of 1984, Warbaby, a 61-foot Sparkman Stephens racing yacht, logged almost 7,000 miles. Her Bermudian owner and skipper, Warren Brown, had planned a voyage that would take him well away from the usual racing and cruising circuit. Leaving Lymington in early May, Warbaby cruised to the Western Isles of Scotland. Via the Orkneys and Shetlands, Warbaby crossed to Norway and continued north through a maze of fjords and islands. The permanent crew consisted of Skip Novak, a professional yachtsman from America. Gay Sama, an English nurse, took care of medical matters and the provisioning of the boat. While bearded Trevor Dow, also from England, was our expert foredeck man. From Norway's northernmost town, Hammerfest, Warbaby crossed the frigid Barents Sea to Spitsbergen, a mountainous Arctic island. We found a wilderness of great beauty and serenity, and a wealth of wildlife. Further north, we brushed past sea ice and aroused the curiosity of a herd of walruses, just 585 miles from the North Pole. Returning south after our brief foray into the high Arctic, we once again threaded our way through the spectacular fjords of northern Norway. Returning to England, we would cross the Norwegian Sea to the Faroes, then sail south, passing the island of Sulisagir, to Stornoway in the Outer Hebrides. Lastly, we would visit Britain's remotest island group, St Kilda. Before setting sail for the Faroes, we tried our hands at cod fishing. Adrift over a 75-foot bank just south of the Lofoten Islands, we felt confident that we could catch something. The Lofoten fishing grounds are amongst the most productive in the world. John Harris and Sandy Mello, keen sailors from Bermuda, had just joined the boat.
An optimist.
Right. Yep, there he goes. Got another one.
Come on, Gav. Right. 80-pound wahoo.
During the dark, cold winter, 4,000 to 5,000 fishermen gather over the Lofoten banks to catch the migrating cod, which feed and spawn in this area, before swimming on north to their summer feeding grounds in the Barents Sea. Most of the cod which were so obligingly falling for our lures were of a small reddish variety of the species, which remains in the Lofoten area throughout the year. Seeing the live cod was quite a novelty for all of us, especially for the Bermudians on board. For despite an abundance of delicious tropical fish in the waters around Bermuda, a traditional Bermudan breakfast consists of imported cod, or codfish as they call it, boiled with potatoes and served with bananas.
Why are you worried about around here? If you look out there, you've got the local fishing boats all around. Now, what's wrong with that?
Plenty of fishing.
Well, Charlie, the problem is my long. It's very well with
We also caught coalfish, a close relative of the cod, and almost as good to eat. Underway again, we headed southwest along the chain of islands that forms the so-called Lofoten Wall. Stretching 60 miles out into the Norwegian Sea, it forms a natural fish trap, slowing the northward migration of the Barents Sea cod in the winter, the main reason that the Lofoten fishery is so productive. Eventually, most of these fish find their way around the headland and return to the Arctic. The passage through which the cod swim is the turbulent Moskenstraum, between the end of the Lofoten Wall and the island of Mosken, perhaps better known as Edgar Allan Poe's Maelstrom. We didn't see any whirlpools, as the tide was slack. In fact, the Maelstrom could hardly have looked more benign. several newly fledged kittiwakes swooped past us. The black bars on the wings and neck marked them out as first-year birds. Raised on perilously narrow cliff ledges, the young kittiwakes may gain some protection from these distinctive marks. They may mean to adult kittiwakes, "Don't knock me off, I can't fly." Leaving the Lofoten Islands astern, we continued to work our way south along Norway's coast, sheltered from the open sea by numerous islands. Warren and Skip found the intricate maze of fjords we had entered could be quite confusing.
Sandy enthused about everything, which was a great tonic for the rest of us, as we were feeling rather jaded after our long voyage to the Arctic.
On August the 8th, 225 miles south of the Lofoten Islands, we set out across the Norwegian Sea for the Faroes, 600 miles away. During the first day out, the wind slowly rose to 25 knots and Warbaby bounced over a lumpy sea. On the third day, the wind became stronger still, reaching 30 knots, and it rained heavily. A Russian trawler followed us for a while. We wondered whether fishing was their only purpose in these waters. After weeks of the continuous daylight of the Arctic summer, darkness at night seemed strange and frightening. We saw the aurora borealis for the first time, like ghostly white curtains hanging from the inky sky.
Enjoying the warmth of our diesel heater, I relaxed with a book. At 68, I was the oldest member of the crew and seemed to feel the cold more than the others.
Lying midway between Scotland and Iceland, the 18 volcanic Faroe Islands extend about 60 miles north to south and 40 miles east to west. We plan to sail inside the two easternmost islands and then make straight for the capital of the Faroes, Tórshavn. Streymoy and Eysturoy, the two main islands, could then be explored by car. Thanks to our skipper's careful navigation, we had made a perfect landfall. We had arrived at Fugløy, which means Bird Island in Faroese. It was too late in the season for most of the cliff-nesting seabirds, but we did spot a few fulmars, a graceful relative of the albatross. The cliffs of the Faroes are amongst the most impressive in the world. This precipice is almost 2,000 feet high. We kept to our 4-hour watches as we still had 50 miles to go before we would reach Tórshavn.
225, but it probably hasn't opened up for you. 225. Yeah, I'm gonna have to stay on this tack for a while, then tack back.
Lying directly in the track of the majority of North Atlantic depressions, the waters around the islands are not often as calm as this. We were lucky. However, our skipper had just received an ominous weather report.
Deep low to the west of us, and the prediction for the sea here in the next 48 hours is an 18-foot sea running where we are right now. It's in front of this very intense low, and it must be up there. I think the sea's running around 24 feet. If the low comes this way, the weather will be quite rough and quite bad, so let's hope we pass before we go south.
Fulmars only began nesting in the Faroes about 140 years ago. Now several 100,000 breed here. Receiving the full benefit of the warm, damp air of the Gulf Stream, grass grows well, making the islands much greener than the Orkneys or Shetlands, well to the south. It is for this reason that they could earn the name Sheep Islands, or Feroe, from which we get the anglicised form, Faroe Islands. The wind grew stronger as we approached a narrow fjord between two islands. We were well reefed down, only because the main had split during the passage from Norway. The Faroes are thought to be amongst the last islands in the North Atlantic to have been discovered and colonised. They may well have had no human inhabitants until around the year 700, when Irish monks, seeking solitude, sailed north in small leather boats. Reaching the Orkneys and Shetlands, they may have observed land birds migrating north in the spring, and deduced that there must be land further north. That such a voyage was possible was proved by Tim Severin and a daring crew in 1976. Their remarkably sturdy 36-foot leather boat, named after St. Brendan, the most famous of the Irish hermits, not only made it to the Faroes, but reached Iceland, Greenland, and eventually Boston. In a narrow Faroese fjord like this one, they very nearly came to grief. In places, tidal currents can reach 10 knots, and powerful katabatic winds can knock a boat flat. The Faroes are the highest part of a volcanic ridge that was gradually built up, layer upon layer, during the Tertiary period. The alternate bands of lava and ash left by successive eruptions are clearly visible, giving the mountains a layer cake appearance.
The crew of War Baby had no idea of what to expect at the Faroes' capital, Tórshavn. Most of us entertained romantic notions of a weather-beaten fishing village populated by similarly weather-beaten folk mending nets and knitting pullovers. We were in for a big surprise.
Tórshavn is a substantial town with a busy port. We were to find it startlingly modern and sophisticated. As we entered the harbour, we were boarded by a customs officer. We wondered what he would make of War Baby's ample stock of alcohol. Several Norwegians had warned us that the Faroe Islands are dry. There are no public houses or bars, and the only kinds of beer and wine available in the shops are alcohol-free substitutes. Acting as pilot, the custom officer directed us towards a suitable berth. The sheltered arm of the harbour into which he guided us was almost filled with Faroese fishing boats. Although most are still beautifully crafted in wood, many are now made of fiberglass.
Lovely boats with their colours.
So different from what we had expected, Tórshavn fascinated us.
Lovely. Okay.
We tied up alongside 3 other foreign boats. Including War Baby, there were just 5 visiting yachts in the harbour. The customs officer and our skipper disappeared below decks for a long time. Eventually it transpired that our hoard of wines and spirits was acceptable, providing that none of it found its way ashore. We were intrigued by the converted trawler lying astern of us. A kind of marine ambulance, it ferries the sick and injured from outlying islands. Europe's smallest capital, Tórshavn has a population of less than 13,000. Almost a third of all Faroe Islanders live here. Perhaps in reaction to the almost perpetually grey weather, the houses are all painted in bright colours. We noticed that many have traditional turf roofs. The turfs are laid on a bed of birch bark. Besides being waterproof and providing good insulation, these roofs also produce a useful grass crop. Not much more imposing than a scout hut, the Faroese Parliament, or Lugting, stands proudly in the centre of the town. Before the Home Rule Act was passed, a Danish governor resided here. The Faroe Islanders are proud of their independence. They have their own flag and have made Faroese their official language. A written form of it was not created until the end of World War II. It is more akin to Icelandic than Danish. For all this, the Faroes are still closely tied to Denmark. The Danish government retains responsibility for the defence of the islands under the NATO umbrella and all other foreign affairs. Danish state subsidies make up about a third of the national revenue, while most of the rest comes from the thriving fishing industry. The standard of living enjoyed by the islanders is amongst the highest in Europe. The Faroese are a highly literate, cultured people. There is much interest in the arts, and their unique, almost entirely Viking cultural heritage has survived remarkably intact due to the island's long isolation from the outside world. We found the busy harbour a source of continual interest. A Danish warship arrives as a car ferry leaves for Denmark. The clang of metal on metal rings out over Thor's harbour, while another ferry arrives from Norway. It seems as if every islander owns one of these small fishing boats, so obviously Viking in ancestry. They look like pleasure craft, but it is from these that almost all the fish caught in inshore waters are landed. This fully rigged ship was on her way home to Denmark after taking part in one of the tall ships races. Two young locals talked Trevor into taking them across the harbour to see the new arrival. Appointing himself our guide to the Faroes, 12-year-old Hayan Christiansen became known to us as local knowledge. His English was embarrassingly good. His friend could only speak Faroese. The Georgstager was built in 1935 as a replacement for a similar vessel of the same name. The original ship was built in 1882 by a Danish shipowner, in memory of his son who died at the young age of 22. Like its predecessor, which is now in retirement at the Mystic Seaport Museum in Connecticut, the present ship is used for training merchant navy cadets. Now enjoying considerable financial support from the Danish government, the Georgstager shows the flag for Denmark in most of the tall ships races. One of the smallest full-rig ships ever built, the Georgstager is only 151 foot long, with the mainmast rising just 92 foot from the deck, not much taller than Warbaby's mast. She is manned by 10 officers and 60 cadets. Just astern of this splendid ship, we found a much older boat. The Westward Ho was among a number of fishing smacks bought by Faroe Islanders for next to nothing from British fishermen who were busy embracing the age of steam during the last years of the 19th century. From the 1890s until the 1950s, enterprising Faroese fishermen made long and dangerous voyages to the stormy fishing grounds off Iceland and Greenland in these old and obsolete boats. Many men and several of the fishing smacks never returned, but it was in this way that the Faroe Islands' deep-sea fishing industry was started. It is now one of the most modern and efficient in the world. More than a third of the population is directly involved in the fishing industry, and fish and fish products make up 95% of the island's exports. Trevor now discovered the real reason why the two Faroese lads had begged him to take them across the harbour. An interest in old ships had nothing to do with it. They just wanted to have a go driving the dinghy as fast as possible. Warbaby was now lying alongside a French boat, the captain and crew of which proved great company. When an Irish yacht joined us, a series of lively parties began, which the sober inhabitants of Tórshavn might have frowned upon. Almost recovered from the excesses of the evening before, we set out to explore the two main islands by car. It was not long before a dense cloud swept over us. Tourist leaflets warned walkers and climbers of the dangers of getting lost in the mountains. A thick fog can descend rapidly and linger for days. Incoming aircraft always carry enough fuel for a return trip, in case fog should prevent them landing in the Faroes, as it often does. We were impressed by the roads. Before World War I, there were none at all, only paths marked by cairns. Now there are over 250 miles of superbly engineered and very expensive-looking roads reaching even the smallest settlements. We passed through several small villages, each with a wooden church with a turf roof. In the northeast corner of the island of Eysturoy, we found a particularly remote village. Like every other Faroese village, Funingor was built within a stone's throw of the sea. It lies at the foot of an immense glaciated valley. We noticed waterfalls everywhere. The Faroese are never short of water. On average, it rains on 2 out of every 3 days. The men catch fish from open rowing boats, as they have for centuries. After fishing, agriculture is the second most important industry in the islands. Some of the villagers were cutting the grass crop and putting it out to dry on long fences.